Living with a chronic respiratory condition doesn't mean giving up the things you love to do. At Blue Zone Health, we're here to help you breathe easier and rebuild your strength. Our online cardiopulmonary rehab program offers tailored exercises, self-management training, and expert support from certified respiratory therapists. Accessible anytime, it's designed to reduce breathlessness, improve lung function, and empower you, all while connecting you with a supportive community. Visit bluezone.health and take the first step towards stronger lungs and a healthier future. Blue Zone Health. Breathe better, live better.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cozy Lung Lounge. We are back for another episode. I'm here with my colleagues, Kelly and Amy.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into another lung condition. This time, we're talking about emphysema. And emphysema has got some physical characteristics that we're going to talk about step by step. And I hope you learn a lot today.
So if you guys remember for our last episode, we talked all about, or 2 episodes ago, we talked all about COPD. So emphysema kind of falls under that umbrella of COPD. So if you guys want to go back and watch that episode first and then come over to this one, if you haven't watched that one already, then that might give you a little bit more background as we transition into talking about emphysema.
Emphysema is all about your alveoli. And your alveoli are the air sacs of your lung. And while it's very simplistic, you can think of them as balloons. They should be inflated much of the time. They should never collapse all of the way. In emphysema, they lose their shape and their surface area, making it really hard for oxygen to enter the blood. Alveoli is where that oxygen and the carbon dioxide, that exchange takes place.
There's also a type of emphysema that affects not just the alveoli, but what's called the conducting airways, which is the small tubes that connect to the actual air sacs, the balloon-like alveoli. So sometimes those get stretched out as well, as much as the air sacs themselves. Sometimes it's both.
Now, it's really important to have our alveoli in good condition because that's where the oxygen gets across, and having the good surface area for that oxygen to diffuse in and the carbon dioxide to diffuse out is very important. There's capillaries next to every air sac.
Well, the thing that happens also with emphysema is, and somewhat the same in COPD, but in emphysema, every time those alveoli, the air sacs, get stretched out and they lose their elasticity, remember there's a capillary network that's winding all around each alveoli. And when those stretch out, those capillaries break. So not only are you not getting oxygen into the air sacs, even if those capillaries are stretched and broken, they can't carry oxygen and they can't drop off carbon dioxide, which is what leaves people with emphysema so breathless.
And then a lot of times with emphysema, you'll see that barrel chest look. I know we talked about that in our COPD episode, but if those alveolar sacs are starting to become floppy or they're not able to inflate, then you're inhaling, but you can't get that air out. So you end up with this barrel chest because you're not able to push all of your air out, which is that main characteristic of having COPD.
We can differentiate between the pink puffers and the blue bloaters. So the pink puffers are classically our emphysema patients that, as Amy said, you can get the air in, but you can't get it out. And you trap that air and your chest just keeps expanding. Your rib cage will expand with it. And the best remedy for that is pursed lip diaphragmatic breathing. And we'll talk about that in a second, as opposed to a blue bloater. So a blue bloater doesn't, the same mechanism in a way, but they don't get enough oxygen in, they don't get enough carbon dioxide out, but to a lesser degree, they don't get that barrel chest. So as respiratory therapists, I know I can spot a pink puffer and a blue bloater a mile away. How about you, Gina?
I can. I've just had a hard time solidifying those concepts in my brain. I know how they are, but like you just explained, that was very good explanation of those.
Well, and I think it also is tricky because there's some patients that really worry, which one do I have? Am I a pink puffer or blue bloater? Do I have emphysema? Do I have COPD? Do I have chronic bronchitis? And essentially the treatment for all three is almost the same. Very, very
Yeah.
similar.
So if you're wondering, which you have, you're going to look at your symptoms first. You know, might be shortness of breath during exertion. That's because your lung pump, per se, does not pump air in and out quite as easily. You're trapping a lot of air in those early stages. You're not quite used to that. You might have a cough, but it's going to be a dry cough, not a wet cough, not a phlegmy cough. That would be more chronic bronchitis, has more of that phlegm.
So we pulled up a picture of what emphysema looks like way down deep in the lung. So if you look at the picture on the left, that's a normal healthy alveolar sac with a normal conducting airway, terminal bronchioles. And if you notice, it looks kind of like grapes. Actually, if you were gonna have a look at it, it more looks like broccoli. Think about a stalk of broccoli upside down. It kind of looks like that. If you look at the picture on the right, all of those septal walls have been damaged. And so they can get the air in, but they have so overextended those little balloons, the alveoli, that it's broken all the septal walls and broken all the capillaries. And then in addition to that, they can't get the air out. So you have, say, all that stale air in your lungs with carbon dioxide, and you don't have any room to get oxygen in. And the little bit of healthy alveoli that you do have is all you have, the only way you have to get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, unfortunately. Hi, I'm Kelly, a registered respiratory therapist with Blue Zone Health. Do you feel breathless much of the time? Are you unsure of how to manage your breathlessness? Is it keeping you from doing all the things that you would like to do? I'm here to help you learn to work with your healthcare team to come up with a plan that will work for you. There are lots of tools, tips, and tricks and breathing exercises that you can do now that will help you breathe easier and more effectively. I look forward to joining you on this journey and empowering you to breathe better.
So, what are some of the causes of emphysema?
Number one cause is smoking, generally cigarette smoking in particular, but there's other kinds of smoke that you can be exposed to. Kelly, I know you know a lot about the enzymes and the mechanism of action on how that actually works in your airways.
Well, cigarette smoke actually contains an enzyme, and enzymes are substances that digest things. And so every time you smoke a cigarette, you're literally inhaling an enzyme that is digesting microscopic pieces of your lung. So sometimes people will say, oh, I just have a smoker's cough, but actually every time they cough, they are losing microscopic pieces of their lung. And when you do that over time, you lose enough lung. So smoking, and don't forget secondhand smoking, can also cause this. There's a type of emphysema called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. That's where the person is actually missing a gene or a part of a protein in the gene, and it gives them an emphysema-like experience. It's the best way I can describe it. So this person may have never smoked, never been around secondhand smoke, never did anything bad for their lungs, and yet they have this A1A deficiency that causes them to act like they have emphysema.
Now, those are the kind of patients, like you said, they don't have a lot of risk factors. So you would want to suspect alpha-1 in a younger patient who doesn't have a smoking history. Sometimes these patients are also discovered when their children have liver disease and they find there's an alpha-1 gene in the family, and then the family gets worked up. And sometimes the parents had an undiagnosed lung disease that they didn't know they had.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
Yep, because you've got a lot of liver involvement with alpha-1. And so, yeah, we're seeing it in the liver kids.
And I know, we talked about this again before in the COPD episode, but just environmental toxins. So any kind of pollutants that are in the air, if you work in an industry where maybe you're working in factories or you're doing mining, yard work, we talked about even if you clean buildings, clean houses, whatever that is, you're around a lot of chemicals or fumes, pollutants in the air, dust, anything like that can slowly kind of damage your lungs over time. And that's how, we call all of these diseases progressive lung diseases. And it doesn't just happen overnight. This happens over years and years and years of exposure to these things.
One of the new things I've been asking during my pulmonary function history taking is workplace exposure. Were you exposed to anything over your career? A lot of times when patients say, I'm retired now, I'm not exposed to anything, but anytime over your career. A lot of Navy guys report in the ships they've been really exposed to asbestos really close to their faces. It may have been like Amy said, a cleaning lady who's had a lot of chemicals, or even a hairdresser. A lot of those kinds of things you want to make sure that you discuss with your doctor if you've had any of those over the course of your life.
There are so many chemicals that were circulating around out there 20, 30 years ago that we didn't really think about. Think about like nail technicians, the people who put on artificial nails, and then the people who do nail polish all day long. They're at risk. Even farmers are at risk with pesticides flying around the air every time they walk on the dirt. It's really important just to protect yourself from just about everything nowadays. If you work outside, or if you know that you work in an industry where you are exposed to chemicals.
If you notice you're having a lot of signs and symptoms of emphysema, the shortness of breath during exertion, needing to do this pursed-lip breathing kind of naturally, you're having a hard time breathing, you may be getting some weight loss, and that dry cough. If you start to have some of those things, what might your doctor do next, guys?
Well, I think for starters is the pulmonary function testing, which should include the 6-minute walk testing. And I think we have a whole episode that we did on what is the definitive 6-minute walk. It's not running around the office just to see if you desaturate. It's an actual 6-minute walking test. But pulmonary function testing, including the diffusion capacity, that's kind of the gold standard. You might get sent to go have a CT scan or a high resolution CT scan, but most of the time, I think they'll do that if they're just on the borderline. But if you're already presenting with shortness of breath on exertion, you already are breathing, pursed lip breathing naturally without having been taught, then I think we've got our diagnosis.
I'm seeing a lot of patients who come in because they've had a CAT scan for another reason, and it says they've got hyperinflated lungs, suspecting emphysema changes. And sometimes you just find that it's an incidental finding, maybe you're having a cardiac workup or something else. They may find some of those hyperinflated lungs. Now, if they find that on imaging, you still need to go have your spirometry and your DLCO done to measure what's going on in the inside of those airways and the lung tissues.
I think in terms of management of these things, I think number one is ask your doctor to get you into a pulmonary rehab program of any sort so that you can correctly move and breathe at the same time. There's medication management. There are long-acting bronchodilators, inhalers that you can take that'll help. What else we got?
You want to make sure, though, if you're taking those inhalers, and you purely have emphysema, they may not work very well because emphysema is a disease of your air sacs, and inhalers work mostly on the airways themselves. And so if you're not getting a lot of benefit from your inhalers, you might ask your doctor, do you have more of an emphysema type? Do you have any of those sorts of, even an asthma in there?
Yeah, very important with COPD, emphysema, those diseases. If you are taking inhalers, before you even start with the inhaler, take a deep breath in and then use your pursed lip breathing to exhale all that stale air out so that there's actually room for the inhaler medication to get deep, deep down into the lungs. Otherwise, it just sits in the back of your throat and does you no good whatsoever.
What about spacers? Are those helpful for people with emphysema?
Absolutely. And I know nobody likes spacers, but they're very, very important because it'll hold that medication in suspension so that that whole inhalation, it will work its way down deep into the lungs where it needs to go instead of getting all stuck in the back of your throat.
I mentioned earlier you may be getting short of breath because your lung pump doesn't work, and that's how you get your air in, your air out, your air in. If you're having a lot of air trapping and you can't fix it with forced breathing and these other interventions, you might need to have an advanced intervention like an endobronchial. We talked about that quite a bit in an earlier episode. That actually puts a one-way valve in your lungs to let the air out and not so much air in.
Absolutely. That is, if I'm correct, it's episode 19. We had Johnny Colley, as I believe her name. She came on and spoke all about the different surgical options. So the biggest thing is just to keep advocating for yourself. Keep looking at your symptoms, writing your symptoms down, and maybe keep a log of everything, so that if you feel like maybe your medicine isn't working right, your symptoms are getting worse again, or they're just not getting any better, keeping a log of that so that you can talk with your doctor and advocate for yourself and say, hey, this isn't working. Can we try something different? Is going to be really important.
Please advocate for yourselves. And one more intervention that was popular years ago was when they would take out, it was called lung volume reduction surgery, but you had to have a certain type of emphysema, whereas most of your emphysema, your blown alveoli were up at the apices at the top. Or you could have it where it was all concentrated on the bottom. So if you had diffused emphysema and damage everywhere, you weren't a candidate for lung volume reduction surgery. I don't know the actual stats, but I think the endobronchial valves are more popular now than the lung volume reduction surgery because they don't want to really take out lung. I know a lot of patients that had it done said, you're going to take out my lung. I can barely breathe. But the answer was that lung isn't doing anything for you. It's just taking up space. And so by doing so, we hope we could expand the rest of your lung and let it be a little bit more elastic. So
now, one of the most important interventions for an emphysema patient may be oxygen. And so early emphysema, no, your oxygen levels are really okay. As your disease progresses, you may not be able to carry as much oxygen. And so having supplemental oxygen is really quite important for patients who can't carry enough through their alveoli into their bloodstream.
And just be careful if you do buy one of those portable oxygen concentrators, always buy them new. That way they have a warranty and they're clean.
And make sure they're providing 100% oxygen, not a lesser amount of oxygen. Those Amazon ones aren't so good. Make sure you check those out. Now, if you've been listening to this episode and we didn't answer your question, please reach out to us. Either comment below the podcast you're listening to, or it's YouTube. Send us an email. You can find us on the Cozy Lung Lounge on Facebook and reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer the questions you have specifically about your emphysema.
Please do.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you guys all in the next episode. We're going to be talking about pulmonary fibrosis. So if that's something, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about, just tune in at the end of this month.
Bye. See you next time.
Bye everyone.
Hi, friends. This episode of the Cozy Lung Lounge is brought to you by Hoot and Nanny Joy, where your health and wellness take center stage. At Hoot and Nanny Joy, we know how overwhelming it can be to stay on top of your health, especially when life gets busy or chronic illness adds challenges. That's why we've created self-study programs designed to meet you right where you are. These programs are simple, flexible, and packed with tools to help you thrive. And they come with something extra, access to a live health coach. That's me, to guide you every step of the way. Whether it's improving your sleep, learning to nourish your body, or managing stress, our programs combine proven science with practical, real-life strategies. You can work at your own pace, get the answers you need during coaching sessions, and feel confident you're making progress. Ready to take that first step? Visit hootnannyjoy.com to explore the programs and choose the one that fits your journey best. Hoot Nanny Joy, because your health deserves a little joy.